Janavalabha Girivarandhari Janavalabha Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
कीर्तन तुम पे हो रहा लाइव रिकॉर्ड है लाइव हो रहा है
Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Phew. Okay. So we're going to talk about the prayers of Lord Brahma. Anyway, first we'll do the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we'll start with chapter 14. So I'll just recite the verse and then read the translation of purport. Then we'll just go through the translations, not necessarily through all the translations, but just, commenting on these prayers.
Shall I share the screen, Maharaj, for 14th chapter? Or would you like to share, whichever?
I think that
We'll leave it out.
I'll leave it because if we're doing call and response, it's not going to be very efficient, because nobody can hear anybody else. So I mean, you can do if you want. We can, if you want to share it, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I will do that, Maharaj. Just translations I will put, yeah.
Okay. Shri Brahma Uvacha Nomiya Debra Vipuse Tadit Ambaraya Kunja Vatams Paripachala Sanmukya Anya Shaji Kevala Vetravasan Venu Lakshma Shriye Mridyu Pade Pusha Pangajaya. Translation. Lord Brahma said, actually, you can see my screen now. All right?
Maharaj, I've shared. Are you seeing my screen?
I'm just on. There is a screen here.
Yes, I am sharing it.
Your screen. Okay.
Yeah.
It says cloud meeting. Join Zoom. What's that? I mean, we're already joined.
Okay.
Oh, just a minute. I'll knock that off.
But as I'm sharing the screen, like for the 14th chapter, first verse, so that everybody can see the translation on the screen.
Yeah, but I can't.
You can't?
The screen is just showing Zoom join meeting. There is nothing else. I think
Interesting. Okay, let me just 1 second go back. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Let me see. About what now?
Yes, it's better.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just go through the word for word. Brahma Uvacha, Lord Brahma said, know me, I offer praise. Hidya, O most worshipful one. Hey, unto you. Abra, like a dark cloud. Papushe, whose body. Tadit, like lightning. Ambaraya, whose garment, kunja, made of small berries, avatamsa, with ornaments for the ears, paripritscha, and peacock feathers, lasat, resplendent, mukaya, whose face, Vanya Sraje, wearing garlands of forest flowers, Kevala, a morsel of food, Vitra, a stick, Vishana, a buffalo horn, bugle, Venu, and a flute, Lakshma, characterized by Shriye, whose beauty, Mridu, soft, Pade, whose feet, Pashupa, of the coward Nanda Maharaj, and Jaya, unto the sun. Translation. Lord Brahma said, my dear Lord, you are the only worshipful Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore I offer my humble obeisances and prayers just to please you. O son of the king of the cowards, your transcendental body is dark blue like a new cloud. Your garment is brilliant like lightning, and the beauty of your face is enhanced by your gunja earrings and the peacock feather on your head, wearing garlands of various forest flowers and leaves, and equipped with herding stick, a buffalo horn, and a flute. You stand beautifully with a morsel of food in your hand. Excuse me if I keep having a drink. This is lunch. I usually forget. The poet. In the previous chapter, Brahma, the creator of the universe, tried to bewilder the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, by stealing his coward boyfriends and calves. But by a slight exhibition of Krishna's own mystic potency, Brahma himself was completely bewildered. And now, with great humility and devotion, he offers his humble obeisances and prayers unto the Lord. The word Kevala in this verse refers to a morsel of rice mixed with yogurt that Krishna held in his left hand. According to Dayananda Swami, the Lord held a coward stick and buffalo horn pressed under his left arm, and his flute was placed under his belt. Beautifully, young Krishna, decorated with multicolored forest minerals, exhibited opulences far greater than those of Vaikuntha. Although Brahma had seen innumerable forms, four-armed forms of the Lord, he now surrendered unto the lotus feet of the two-armed form of Krishna, who appeared as the son of Nanda Maharaj. Brahma offered his prayers to that form. Okay. Om Gyanti Mirandasya Gyanantina Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Jaina Tasmai Shri Guruve Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastatya Visataya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasudeva Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the pastime started with the pastime of Agrasura, demon Aghasura was killed by Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna, entered into his mouth to protect the cowherd boys, and Aghasura immediately closed his mouth. And but Krishna burst out of the top of his head and took the life of Aghasura with him. And that was that. And so, Brahma and the demigods, Brahma noticed this, and he was watching this pastime. And but still, there was some doubt. The very nature of the atmosphere we're living in, it breeds doubt. Where does doubt come from? Doubt comes from ignorance. Ignorance means we don't understand the thing properly, and therefore we're doubtful. So, we have to understand Lord Brahma's position. He's actually the chief deity in the whole universe. He's a secondary creator. It's described how he's actually the form of the Lord in one respect, because he's imbued with the same power. But there's only one person who was actually supreme, and that's Krishna. And, quite often Krishna, in his pastimes, he makes that obvious to everybody. And in this particular case, he's using Lord Brahma to, put that point of view forward, not point of view, but that fact forward for the whole of the, living entities in this material universe. And so doubt, if we want to be free from doubt, we have to be open. What does open mean? It means that we don't bear any internal, in other words, it's called integrity in one respect. Integrity means what's on the outside is what's on the inside. They're both connected. We don't actually think on one platform and act on another platform to, cover up anything. We're completely open. We're on the platform of the soul, actually. But the nature of the material world, it's difficult to remain on that platform. I don't know whether anybody's noticed. I mean, just to get on that platform is actually a big effort. I went on my holidays many years ago before I joined the movement. And we're talking about trying to get on the platform of Krishna consciousness. And I saw this, this young man, he just hired a surfboard. And the first thing you have to learn with a surfboard is how to get on it. And he was completely new. And he'd get on one side and fall off the other side. Then he'd try and slide on with his stomach and his chest, and then gradually go into his knee, and he was off again. And this is what it's like in devotional service, trying to get on the spiritual platform, what to speak of actually maintaining that. But anyway, practice makes perfect, and Lord Brahma has more practice than us, but still, seeing this young boy with a morsel of rice and yogurt dripping between his left hand, of all things, a left hand, I mean, that's a no-no. We never eat with our left hand. So Lord Brahma was confused. How can this be the Supreme Personality of God? He doesn't even know Vedic principles. And, I mean, you can imagine his position. And everybody gets bewildered by it. If we saw a young 4-year-old boy, well, I don't know how, 8-year-old boy, maybe 5, I can't remember what age group this one's in. And, he proposes to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You would think twice. And so Brahma, he became a little arrogant, a little puffed up with his position. He never thought that if this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how can I actually test him? But somehow or other, Yoga Mahamaya works in wonderful ways. And so he started to take all the cowherd well, first of all, he arranged for the cows to wander into the forest. And so Krishna told the cowboys, don't worry, I'll go and fetch them. I'll be back in a moment. You start taking prasadam. And so this is when the whole thing started to, the whole pastime started. So immediately Lord Brahma took the cowherd boys and he placed them in a cave in Brahmaloka, which is, not close to 2 billion miles away. And then he came back within a second. And then what did he see? All the cowherd boys were actually, sat in the same place. And so he went back to Brahmaloka to have another look. No, they're still there. Oh no, they are then. We're on the earthly planet. So he went back. And, then all of a sudden, to make things worse, or to make things better in the long run, all these Vishnu forms started coming out of these bodies of the cowherd boys. And he became completely bewildered, and he lost consciousness also. He actually collapsed. He was so bewildered. Reminds me once when I was on Sankirtan, I was so bewildered I nearly collapsed. Going door to door, it was just, anyway, that's a whole new story. But actually from that position, we got a big revelation. Sometimes we're brought to that point where we haven't got a clue what to do, and then Krishna opens up the whole view. And so, and then it went back to Vaikuntha, where they were back in the city. He saw the cowherd boys and all the Vishnu forms emanating, and then the scene came back to where he was again. And he was back in the situation with the cowherd boys. And at that he started to realize that he'd made a big mistake. How many sets of cowherd boys were there? Anybody know? Any answers? No answers, okay. How many sets? Well, there was the set which was originally there, right? And so Lord Brahma took them, right? So there's one set now in Brahmaloka. And then Krishna expanded himself into the cowherd boys. So now there's 2 sets. Well, so there's 2 sets of cowherd boys. Everybody agree? Well, let's think about this, The cowherd boys are nearly as powerful as Lord Krishna. And, Brahma is nowhere near as powerful as them, so how can he steal them? And not only that, would Krishna allow his cowherd boys to be stolen by a small Brahman in the material world? I don't think so. So actually what happened is Krishna created Maik cowherd boys. And Brahma stole those. Meanwhile, the original cowherd boys were actually playing or performing the pastime somewhere else as if nothing had happened. So Brahma took the Maik cowherd boys back to Brahmaloka. So there were 3 sets. Just like, Sita when she's put into the fire. It's not the original Sita. We can't, in the transcendental world, they're not to be judged or by us. So Krishna doesn't allow that. He always creates a situation where we think we may be doing the judging, but it's actually not the case. And so Krishna created that situation, and we've come to the point now where Lord Brahma is completely bewildered. So he comes before Lord Krishna and starts apologizing, offering his prayers. So here we go. We've done the first verse. So next verse is, my dear Lord, neither I nor anyone else can estimate the potency of this transcendental body of yours, which has shown such mercy to me, which appears to be which appears just to fulfill the desires of your pure devotees. Although my mind is completely withdrawn from material affairs, I cannot understand your personal form. How then could I possibly understand the happiness you experience within yourself? So there's one nice verse in the Brahma Samhita. You know, this is a verse that Lord Brahma chanted when he was on the lotus flower before the creation, and he realized the position of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, actually Krishna. And he says, Pantastakoti satavatsara sampragamyo, Ayaratapi manaso manipungavanam, so pyastiyat papadachim achintya sattve, govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. So this is, in the translation is that, you know, the yogis, they drill the respiration, it says. What does it mean? They when you drill something, it's like, you know, the athletes, they'll drill the particular part of the body to get it in a working order. Footballers will drill the legs, or we'll drill our intelligence to try and pass an examination. So they're fixed on controlling the breathing process, and it extends for a long, long time. They're trying to do this. You know, yogis live for up to 100,000 years in past ages, and they wouldn't necessarily perfect their life in one lifetime. So it says that Pantastakoti, Koti Satavatsara. It means that thousands of millions of years they're doing this. And then there's the Gyanis. They're actually speculating, neti. It's not this. It's not this. The absolute truth is not this. Similarly, Vayaratapi manaso munipungavarnam. Vayaratapi manaso means the speed of the wind, or the speed, or even faster, the speed of the mind. Can we calculate the speed of the mind? Whatever we've experienced in this world, wherever it may be, we can be there in a second or less than a second. It's as if for all that, if we run at the speed of mind, what is it now? For the length of time, what's that? Koti Sata, from millions and millions of verse, we run at the speed of mind. We can't even approach the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, they never approach the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's only one person who can, or one class of people who can approach the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's the devotee. Even the yogis or the jnanis, they can approach the outskirts of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They never actually get the shelter. We were saying this morning, it's just like, to actually get the shelter of Krishna is not an easy thing. Krishna doesn't give pure devotional service or doesn't reveal himself to anybody except one who is actually established in pure devotional service. He may give liberation, he may give, super soul realization. But what is liberation? Liberation, I was explaining how, a charitable person like the Supreme Lord, especially, will give things very easily. We'll even give a big donation to somebody. We don't really know much about that particular person or that particular organization. It's not actually a real factor in our real life. but we do it out of, either compassion or our magnanimity. But it doesn't really, it's not really a connection as such. But with the family members, it's a completely different thing. So we can just understand, the position of the impersonalists, of the yogis. They've got very little connection with the absolute truth. It's only the devotional process which gives us that facility to take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. So here, this particular verse is, like making that point. This verse indicates not only that the Lord can perform only any bodily function with any of his limbs, but also that he can see through the eyes of his Vishnu expansions. So, when the Vishnu expansion is there, Krishna can actually see through that expansion. It's not that Krishna's not there Krishna's there in everything. It's just that when Krishna appears personally, all the expansions are there in one body. But simultaneously, all the expansions, Krishna is actually cognizant of seeing through their eyes, hearing through their ears. Although they're different personalities, Krishna still has the prerogative to actually be within that body, or indeed through the eyes of any living entity. And similarly, so Krishna can appear within the body of an ordinary conditioned soul and see through that. He can hear through the ears of any Vishnu or Jiva expansion. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that although the Lord can perform any function with any one of his senses in his transcendental pastimes of Sri Krishna, he generally sees with his eyes, touches with his hands, hears with his ears, and so on. Thus he behaves like the most beautiful and charming young cowherd boy. Yes, so the Vedic knowledge expands from Lord Brahma, who is, he's called Adi Kavi. Adi Kavi means the original poet. And so, we're hearing the pastimes and prayers of Adi Kavi. Have you got any Adi Kavis in the congregation? Anybody named Adi Kavi?
No, Maharaj, we haven't had one.
All right. Anyway, be patient, I'm sure. So next verse, this is a really important verse. This is a really important verse. Jnane priyasam udapasyamanti eva jivanti sanmakaritam baradiya vartam stane sitash shrutigatim tanuvan manobya ye prayasho jita jita apiptrais trilokyam. Those who even while remaining in their established social position, that's us, throw away this process of speculative knowledge. I hope that's us. And with their body, words and mind offer all respects to descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicating their lives to these narrations, which are vibrated by you personally and by your pure devotees. Certainly conquer your lordship, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds. So this brings in mind the pastime of Lord Chaitanya when he approached Ramananda Roy on the banks of the Godavari, I think it was, in South India. He would be told to meet by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya didn't understand Ramananda Roy's real position, but he was very much attracted. And then when he became a devotee by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then he fully understood Ramananda Roy's position. We have to become a devotee to really appreciate a devotee. And so he asked Lord Chaitanya, please see when you go on your travels to South India, please see Ramananda Roy. And so Lord Chaitanya remembered this, and he met him on the banks of the, was it the Godavari or Kaveri? Anyway, whichever. And then as Lord Chaitanya is taking a bath, you know, there was all these musical instruments being performed, bugles, drums, different types of shanai. And he looked in the distance, and there was a large group of people approaching. And this was Ramananda Roy. He was the governor of Madras, and everywhere he went, he had his entourage. And you can imagine how much is, you know, revered by the people of Madras. And so they came to be near Lord Chaitanya. And, you know, when Ramananda Roy got down from his palanquin, he saw Lord Chaitanya, and they approached one another. And Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy, they embraced, and they just erupted in ecstasy, and they were rolling on the floor. The governor of Madras was rolling on the floor in front of all his subordinates. They were completely bewildered. And anyway, so then they shake their ecstasy, and Lord Chaitanya told Ramananda Roy, please, I would like to see you again. Please come back to this place, but not with all your retinue, and we can discuss Shastra. And so Lord Chaitanya received Ramananda Roy the next day, and they started discussing. And Lord Chaitanya immediately said, you know, what is it? Inquiry. My inquiry is to, can you speak something important about Shastra, about devotional service, about transcendental knowledge, and quote from Shastra to back up your statements? And, you know, Ramananda Roy, he first stated that, well, first of all, he said, you know, what can I say in front of you? You know, you're the supreme knowledgeable, you know everything. But, you know, you've asked, so I'll try to answer. And he gave knowledge about Varnashram Dhan. Atabumbia Dudashas, Varnashrama, Vibhagasa, Svanasitashi Dharmasha, Samsidir Haritoshanam. Haritoshanam, what really pleases Krishna? That's the goal of all the Shastras is to, or the goal of our success in anything is to please Krishna. Is that right? So obviously this is a good answer. And Lord Chaitanya said, this is okay, but this is external. And, you know, Varnashram, doing our duty according to the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead pleases him like anything. But he wasn't happy with that. And so then he carried on, he said, what's that verse? It's 927.
Yat karoshi yadashnas.
Yat karoshi yadas yadjidoshi dadasya yat apashasi kuntya mat kurushvamadapanam. You know, this is actually also very elevated. All that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer, as well as all austerities that we perform, do it as a service to me, Krishna says. And Lord Chaitanya said, this is still external. Why? We sometimes we mistake this for pure devotional service. But actually, anybody can do that. You can go to a materialist in the street and say, start offering everything to Krishna. And he may agree. I mean, probably he won't, but he may decide. And, you know, a materialistic person may see that to offer things to the Supreme Lord is not bad, because actually I'll get it back so many times. You know, and people go to the temple on that basis. Ching, ching, few rupees in the box, and he asks for the earth, you know. But anyway, so this is why Lord Chaitanya rejected that even a person who's not in knowledge about the Supreme Lord, he may do that. He may start to surrender things. Like it's a secondary thing. First I do it, and then I surrender it. So he says, please say more. So then Lord Chaitanya he went on to the final verse in the Bhagavad Gita, and he said that, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender to me. I'll protect you from all sinful reaction. And that seems like, well, you can't do any better than that. Abandon all varieties, all, speculation. This is what this verse is saying. All gyan, all yoga, all karmic, all the different processes, varnashram, dham, and surrender to the Supreme Lord. And when he said that, Lord Chaitanya said, this is okay, but people may surrender without knowledge. So, we've gone from surrendering to something we don't really understand. We've got no inclination, but we think we'll get some from it by surrendering the results. Now we've gone to the stage of surrendering to the Supreme Lord, like a Kanishtra-adhikari without proper understanding, and to some degree like a Madhyama-adhikari without full understanding. So he's asking him to come to a higher platform. He said, so then he quoted Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nasochiti Nakanksiti Samak Sarvishu Bhutshu Bhakti Lavatepanam. So he said, surrender. He said, you have to develop knowledge. And so Ramananda Roy quoted this verse, come to the spiritual platform. Now we're not on the material platform of just trying to surrender to Krishna without proper understanding. Now, to surrender to Krishna, we have to be on the spiritual platform. To understand Krishna, we have to be in the same quality and the spiritual quality. But Lord Chaitanya said that this is speculation. We haven't really got an understanding of who Krishna really is. And so actually the next verse in the Bhagavad Gita tells us that from that platform we should take up devotional service. But then he didn't quote that verse, he went straight to the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam starts when the Bhagavad Gita leaves off. Abandon all varieties of religion and surrender to me. That starts with the Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharma approaches the Kaitapatra, but abandon, these religious principles which are cheating. So the Bhagavatam's doing that. So then he quoted Lord Brahma's prayer, his prayer we're now with. That, whether we're actually on the Brahma Bhuta platform, whether we're following all the, whether we're offering everything to Krishna, whether we're actually, performing our varnashram duties very nicely, these things are external. These are not so. You see, the process is to hear. This is the most important process of devotional service. And this is what is being said here, jnane priyasam, give it up, don't speculate. Udapasya, we shouldn't even slightly endeavour to understand the absolute truth, it says in the purport. For it invariably carries one to an imperfect, impersonal understanding. The word jivanti indicates that the devotee who always hears about Lord Krishna will go back home, back to Godhead, even if he can do nothing except maintain his existence and hear topics concerning the Lord. Wow, that's a relief. That's a relief. Who will hear? That's another verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Who will fail to hear? A butcher or one who is killing himself, it says. That's what actually happens if we don't hear. We're just killing the soul. Sanatana Goswami has explained the words Tanu Vanmanobi by the words, by the body, words, and mind in three ways. So first one is Vanmanobi, materialists engage in trying to understand the absolute truth with their body, minds, and words, but not taking to this process of hearing. So, they can't understand the absolute truth. Devotees, if they engage their body, mind, and words in the service of the Lord, and then actually Krishna can be conquered. And then Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in support, he actually explains further. He says that he explains that the devotees can take full advantage of the transcendental topics of the Lord by offering all respects to those topics with their body, mind, and words. One should engage his body by touching the ground with his hands, his head by offering obeisances to the topics of the Lord. One should engage his words in praising transcendental literature like Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and also by preaching these glories. And just by, even if we only acquire a little of devotional transcendental knowledge, this is actually enough to conquer the Supreme Lord. We have to remember that devotional service is not an acquisition of knowledge either. You know, we endeavor like anything to try and understand. This is why do we endeavor if knowledge is not? You know, why are we doing Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, all these? Because it's the endeavor that Krishna sees. But you know what we actually do, we can understand is not necessarily an indication. Because at the end of the day, Krishna is revealing the knowledge. It's not external knowledge. It's revealed from in the heart of the devotee who is serious and has the right attitude. So therefore, Nectar of Instruction says it's all a matter of attitude. The devotional service in the Bhagavatam, it's called a change of a heart. First, it's called the Lord in the heart. You know, it starts about the beginning of devotional service in the second canto. Then it talks about, a change of heart. So this is the whole process is a change of heart. And the devotee is that's something which is within his control to change. By performing the process that's laid down, which is given to us by the acharyas, by hearing. This is why this verse is so important. The change of heart comes by hearing. We don't know how it works. You know, sometimes we're not, Prabhupada, he used to listen to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He went to Vrindavan one time and Bhaktisiddhanta was on pilgrimage around Rajmandal. And they went to one place and he was giving a lecture. And then the announcement halfway through the lecture is that there was a parikram to Sheshashayi to see the deity there. And 3/4 of the people, all the devotees, left the lecture and went to where Prabhupada stayed. And he said, I couldn't understand a lot of most of what he was speaking about. It was so elevated, I couldn't understand it. I just like to hear him. And this was Prabhupada's qualification for success. He understand that, to hear from the spiritual master is the key to actually real development of our devotional service. And so we're hearing. And sometimes you think, I've been in so much hearing and there's nothing seems to be happening. But, it's like we're actually undermining the foundation of Maya. You can undermine a foundation and you can prop it up and keep taking out the very earth that's holding up the actual property. And then when you've undermined all the foundation, you take the props out and it collapses. This healing process is doing that. It's undermining the foundation of our false ego. Or in other words, Bhagavatam explains it's actually dissolving the false ego. When something dissolves, sometimes it takes time. We don't even notice it. It just gradually disintegrates into nothing. So anyway, this is enough about, I think this has covered this verse. Of course, Lord Chaitanya goes into other aspects. From this point, he starts going into deeper aspects of devotional service. Ramananda Roy does, right up to the point of the position of Srimati Radharani. But for us in our position, this is one of the most important instructions, is to, relax, Prabhupada writes in his Bhagavad Gita, he says we can stay in our social position and at our leisure, we can chant the Maha Mantra. He makes it very inviting. Wow, that sounds really good. And that's actually the fact. But the trouble is, what's the problem? You know, we've got so many other things that we see as important. And some of the things we can't avoid, we have responsibilities. But, you know, the more we actually hear, the more our responsibilities will become less of a responsibility. We'll see things for what they are. But anyway, we can still carry on using those responsibilities in Krishna's service. I'm just trying to put a point over is that we don't really have any responsibility but to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and hear about Krishna. That's our responsibility. And to emphasize this point, we can't emphasize this enough. If we do that, then, you know, everything will work. Prabhupada did that. He was in a position of complete helplessness. Krishna took away all his business. He had to leave his family in order to preach. And he took sannyas, and the first thing that happened, he got gored by a cow. So, Prabhupada had every reason to think, well, wait a minute, I'm surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What's going on? But, he's a perfect example that so many things may happen. But at the end of the day, Prabhupada heard. And if we hear, then we'll traverse the path very nicely. Okay, so we can go on. And this is a follow-up to that verse. Shreyam Shritim Bhaktim Udashyate Vibho Krishyanti Yat Kevala Bodha Labdaye Yesham Aso Kleshana Eva Sishyate Yanyat Yatastula Tusavagatinam. So just in case we're not actually convinced about the last verse, we still think, well, you can actually chew over these scriptures a little bit and try and understand it from different angles of vision. I mean, devotional service, we can do that, but not from a material angle. This verse is saying that what's it like? It's like, pounding an empty husk. It's like, knocking on a door of an empty house. What's the point? My dear Lord, devotional service unto you is the best path of self-realization. If one gives up that path and engages in the cultivation of speculative knowledge, he will simply undergo a troublesome process and will not achieve his desired result. A person who beats an empty husk of wheat cannot get grain. One who simply speculates cannot achieve self-realization. His only gain is the trouble he puts into it. So I don't think we need to spend too much time on that particular verse. It's self-evident. And we go on to the next verse anyway. I'll just recite the translation. Almighty Lord, in the past, many yogis in this world achieved the platform of devotional service by offering all their endeavors unto you and faithfully carrying out their prescribed duties. Through such devotional service, perfected by the process of hearing and chanting about you, they came to understand you, O infallible one, and and could easily surrender to you and achieve your supreme abode. So yogis, they may not be in full knowledge. They're offering things like we said before. We've gone through that. And, I made the point before that this text 9:27, all that you do, all that you offer. The yogis are on that platform. they're surrendering without proper knowledge. Calm is on that platform. And Gyan is, yeah, okay, carry on. Next verse. Non-devotees, however, cannot realize you in your full personal feature. Nevertheless, it may be possible for them to realize your expansion as the impersonal supreme by cultivating direct perception of the self within the heart. But they can do this only by purifying their minds and senses of all conceptions of material distinctions and all attachment to material sense objects. Only in this way will your impersonal feature manifest itself to them. So this is where we need the association of devotees. You know, we can go on speculating for so many millennia. We get the association of devotees and we can immediately understand the process. I wanted to say something there, completely.
Maharaj, you wanted to say something about Bhakti Charaswami.
Yeah. Okay, so what time do we finish?
Whenever you like, Maharaj, no problem. We have some time.
So I'll go on for a few more verses and then
Sure.
I'll speak a little bit, as much as I possibly can anyway.
Shall I go to the next verse?
Where we're on non-devotees cannot realize, we've just done that one.
This is the next one.
I actually just wanted to say something on this verse that, you know, in the, what do you call that book by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the big one? I can't remember the name. Jaivadam. In Jaivadam, it's talking about, it's giving, you know, like a allegory. You know, Vaishnavas in Bengal, and he's explaining, you know, through this allegory or this story, he's outlining the whole process of devotional service. And one day the Vaishnavas were just about to perform some chanting, and the mullah, the mullah is a Muslim priest, and he came on his horse with all his entourage, and he came in, and so they greeted them, and he wanted to discuss, and he was discussing how we worship. Here it's on about, you know, impersonal understanding, and you know, they're not exactly impersonalists, but they say it's wrong to have a form of the Lord to worship. And so, you know, they were saying that instead of having a form of the Lord, which is made of material elements, we can remember the form of the Lord in the mind. And, you know, this I forget what the name of that particular Vaishnava would be dedicated to actually to speak to him, but he said, you know, the mind's very tricky. How can you understand the form of the Lord in the mind? And he completely annihilated him. Because there was a conversation we went on earlier to that. And, you know, it was actually following on from that about seeing the Lord in the mind. And this is the way the Muslim was actually speaking. But he was saying, how can you rely on the mind? Anyway, it's a whole discussion that. I'll just quickly read through and then we'll talk about Bhakti Charan. In time, learned philosophers or scientists might be able to count all the atoms of the earth, particles of snow, or perhaps even the shining molecules radiating from the sun, the stars and other luminaries. But among these learned men, who could possibly count the unlimited transcendental qualities possessed by you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or have descended into the surface of the earth for the benefit of all living entities? Itam satam Brahma sukana bhucha tasyam gatanam. This is a verse about the gopas. They're playing with Krishna in the spiritual world, but most people, they can't, but people can't understand Krishna. Even the devotees, they think he's actually the Lord Vishnu, the worshipful deity. The materialists think he's an ordinary person. What else is there? The impersonalists think he's something impersonal. But, the reality is something, it's like a fairy tale to the conditioned soul in its darkness of ignorance, but the Lord's playing with his cowherd boys. There's a whole realm of activity in the spiritual world taking place. And it's completely out of our understanding, just by mercy of our mentality. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the time, all while patiently suffering the reaction of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. This is a very famous verse. And this is very encouraging to devotees that, whatever we go through in devotional service, it's actually Krishna's mercy. It's nicely explained in the purport. That, the purport explains that even though we may actually fully engage in devotional service, it's like wine in a pot. When once wine or liquor has been in a pot, even though you may scrupulously clean the pot out, there'll still be a little smell of wine in the pot. There'll be, that essence. So even though we scrupulously purify ourselves, there's still that tendency. It's called kuta. We were doing this in Nectar of Devotion. The inclination. And devotees sometimes get caught up in the inclination to to start doing the things they used to do before they were a devotee and thinking in that way. He says, so Krishna puts a devotee into position where he may undergo what seemingly seems like suffering, but it's actually purifying. He's just letting him know that, this is the material world. This is what it actually is. It's suffering. So that at some point, he just thinks, I get it. I've had enough. I think we've all had that experience. To some point, we just actually realize that it's not worth it. But the essence is still there. So Krishna's making sure that it never comes back. So if we tolerate our situation, it's not a bad situation. It means that, we have a chance to reflect and see what is and hear about Krishna. What is the real reality? We need these impetuses from the Lord. And if we carry on performing devotional service under those difficult conditions, then automatically Krishna it becomes our rightful claim. Krishna's obliged. Dayabai. Okay, so anyway, Lord Brahma's prayers do go on. And at the end, he prays, just like me, he becomes so humble that he has so much realization of the position of Krishna and his pure devotees that he just wants to take birth as a blade of grass on the outskirts of Braj Bhumi so that he can be trampled on by the feet of the devotees. So, Lord Brahma really benefited from that situation. He didn't, complain. Whereas even though he'd acted in an unscrupulous way, as soon as he realized, he surrendered and he got so much realization. So this is the first principle of devotional life, is to tolerate. Don't complain, tolerate. Understand that Krishna is a well-wisher. Something very precious will be learned from this situation. Okay. So, I mean, I'm not really qualified to speak about Bhakti Chiru Maharaj. I've occasionally had his association several times. And, you know, first impressions are actually usually the best impression. And every time I've actually met up with Maharaj, I've always been astounded by his friendliness. He's so friendly. You know, even though I'm just a second generation devotee, he treats you like a friend. He treats you like, you know, you're important and that he's not important. And I'm not just saying that, that's the feeling that you get. Also, Maharaj is very, very erudite. If we listen to his classes, he's understood the philosophy so nicely that he speaks it in such a way that it's actually very, you can easily digest it. You know, he actually speaks for time, place, and circumstance. He's understood very nicely the philosophy, and he can put it into a suitable context so that it can be understood by the audience. And I always found that I got so much from listening to his lectures when I was a brahmachari. Little simple things like, you know, how to use a gomsha. That was one class. I mean, that's not necessarily so important. But I didn't even know how to use a gomsha properly until Maharaj actually gave a class on etiquette. And I was on the zonal supervisor training course in the eco village in Bombay, just outskirts of Bombay. And we were doing different courses. Some were on book distribution, some were on deity worship, on administration, you name it. Probably did about 10 different courses. And one was called Vaishnava etiquette. And just one guest who did that. I mean, you know, Maharaj is the emblem of Vaishnava etiquette. And he gave the course on Vaishnava etiquette, and he was quoting, he'd done it very nicely. He was quoting from different aspects of the Shastra and relating it to Vaishnava etiquette. And the point that he was making all the way through is that, you know, devotees are actually leaders. We're all on different levels of leadership. We're all actually servants. That's the one thing. But in order to practice within this movement to make it successful, we have to take positions of responsibility. And he was making that point that whatever position of responsibility we have, we shouldn't actually forego the proper Vaishnava etiquette. And if that Vaishnava etiquette is maintained, then, you know, Krishna can work in that situation. Krishna doesn't have to put us through this situation of having to suffer, you know, to learn. But he can work in that situation, then the situation is resolved and we go forward very quickly. And I can't remember all the stories that were given, but there was, actually I got, that was my worst exam, Vaishnava etiquette. Somehow or other, you know, anyway, I learned from it. when you actually don't do very well at a thing, you learn more than if you do well. So please excuse me. But yes, I know I was in Chowpatty. I think it was 2002 or something like that. 2003, 2002. And it was the first time I'd been, actually. I just went because one devotee was saying, why don't you go to Chowpatty? And I was thinking, you know, why do I want to go to Chowpatty? Usually you go to Vrindavan or you go to And one year I was in Vrindavan, and for some reason, I got some spare time at the end of the course we did. I thought, I've got a couple of weeks left, I'll get a chow party. And at that time, it was Dayananda Swami's Vyasa Puja. And so, you know, some senior devotees turned up for the Vyasa Puja. You know, they come from the other temple in Bombay, from Vrindavan. Nice to Bhakti Chiru Maharaj had come. And, you know, they were all there, sat on, you know, what it's like in the Chowpatty temple. Well, some of you don't. There's an extended Vyasasan where all the god brothers of the speaker can sit on this equal level. You can probably get 4 to 5, 6 devotees on. So gradually, you know, they had other responsibilities as the time wore on, and they came to pay their respects on that day. And they all eventually left. Some didn't actually sit on the Vyasasan, they were stood at the back and they just wanted to speak about, Dayananda Swami, and then when they'd spoke, they had other duties and they'd leave. And it whittled down to there was just Bhakti Chiru Maharaj and Dayananda Swami on the Vyasasan. And at that point, they both started embracing one another on the Vyasasan. It was really funny. You know, it was like, you don't usually find that happening on a Vyasasan, that, you know, the speakers are actually acting like, you know, they're actually in private, but everybody was there. But one thing that I could understand from that is that they have a very, very deep relationship, which is not actually there between a lot of other devotees. Obviously, all devotees have relationships and they're at different levels, but it emphasized that they were very, very close. And I remember that Dayananda Swami was once giving a talk, and he was talking about when he was a brahmachari in New Vrindavan. And he had the job of looking after some deities on a hill on the Vrindavan land. And he was on his own most of the time. And he used to have the job, or he would volunteer. No, he didn't have the service actually, but he sometimes did the service. And when he found out that Bhakti Chiru Maharaj was not far, I think it was, I don't know where he was anyway, it was quite a way away. And they wanted a volunteer driver to bring him. So he used to immediately volunteer every time Bhakti Chiru Maharaj was nearby or in the town near New Vrindavan. He used to drive out and bring him. And, you know, he was brahmachari and Maharaj was a sannyasi at that time. And he used to give, you know, a bit of detail about the conversations they had. I can't remember them now, but, you know, they very much look forward to seeing one another. And eventually he encouraged Maharaj to take sannyas. He encouraged Dayananda Swami to take sannyas. Yeah, that's the most amazing thing about Maharaj is that the humility and friendliness. He says, but on the other hand, I was speaking to one of his disciples, and I was talking about Maharaj. I said, and it was about, you know, I thought I might have done something which might have upset him or, you know, offended him. And so I spoke to one of his senior disciples. I said, and, you know, I tell him, he said, oh, it's okay. I said, you know, because I know Maharaj is not one for actually, you know, speaking out if there's something wrong. He says, oh, don't you believe it. He says, don't you believe it. If there's something wrong, he'll tell you. So he's outspoken as well. Anyway, you have to be outspoken when you're on the GBC. You know, you have to actually be able to speak what needs to be spoken. I remember him saying that he didn't really want to be on the GBC. And he got elected to the GBC because of the service he was doing. And when he saw how management works, he wasn't actually fussed, to say the least. He was thinking, you know, I think there's better ways I can spend my time. And he was thinking of actually resigning, but then he was thinking, actually, I've been put in this position by the devotees. I should see it as a service to Krishna, and I should tolerate whatever things I don't particularly agree with, and just get on with actually putting things right, which I can put right. And I think that's a good instruction for devotional service. One thing to do, if there's not an agreeable situation, it's quite natural that we may want to actually change the situation so that we can function in devotional service. But we should also be thinking about, you know, why are we in this situation? Can I actually do anything to improve it? And so this is a higher quality of devotional service if we can do that. And this is what it requires in ISKCON. And following Bhakti Maharaj's line of thinking is that, you know, we shouldn't never think of actually, no matter what may happen within the movement, we should never think that it's time to actually go anywhere else. Prabhupada said, your love for me will be shown by how you cooperate to push on this movement. And just like Bhakti Maharaj tolerated the situation, we sometimes have to do that, have to tolerate a situation in order that, you know, we can be helpful in correcting the situation. Sometimes people go outside the movement, they join the Ritviks, they join the, what good is it? Then they start throwing stones at the movement. That doesn't go any good. Anyway, we're going off the subject a little bit. Maharaj has got the proper understanding. Anyway, all glories to Churu Maharaj. I understand that now he's actually improving from his unfortunate situation with this COVID-19 virus. And he went to America. He gave a class to the devotees in Eugene before he left and explained to them why he was going. He felt that it was necessary that, you know, as a leader, he should be there with the devotees who are having to face the difficulty in America, where, you know, COVID-19 is quite prominent, and therefore he wanted to support them. You know, because when a leader's there in the forefront, it's very encouraging to the rest of the devotees. Just like on the battlefield, you know, the Vedic tradition is that the king or the commander-in-chief would be leading the army, and they would be very much inspired by his example. And so Bhakti Churu Maharaj wanted to inspire the devotees by being an example, that he didn't want to isolate in India, where it's relatively disappeared now, but he wanted to give them encouragement and support. So I'm sure that all the devotees will be appreciating that. And we have to see Krishna has his plan, the devotees have their plan. We can pray for Maharaj's recovery so that he can carry on inspiring devotees within this movement. That's a duty of a devotee of Maharaj's caliber. And so, you know, your prayers are very much welcome, and will be we can only pray that, you know, if Lord Krishna is willing, then he will allow Maharaj to carry on inspiring devotees and pushing on this movement in a positive way. It would be a great loss if Krishna actually decided anything different. So I don't know whether anybody else wants to speak anything before we wrap up.
Maharaj, thank you so much for that wonderful clause on Brahma's prayers. There are so many lessons that we can learn, and also nicely talking about Bhakti Chari Swami and inspiring everyone to offer prayers. Thank you, Maharaj. So Madhav Kumar Prabhu, you raised your hand. You have something to ask or comment?
Yeah, just a quick one. Maharaj, thank you so much for sharing your reflections from your interactions with Bhaktacharya Maharaj. On behalf of ISKCON Manchester, we dedicated Friday evening's program to his well-being as well. Also, thank you for taking us through Lord Brahma's prayers. I think there's enough motivation for people to take up devotional service, given that there are multiple benefits. I just had a quick question. I mean, obviously, I do have some viewpoint on that, but I just wanted to hear from you. You made a statement around just simply maintaining our social status and carrying on with at least the bare minimum of chanting the holy names. How do you deal with the situation when, or what suggestion do you make to someone whose social setting has been disturbed? The second part is, so when I say social setting disturbed means in relation to what's happening around the world, Black Lives, etc. And how do you manage this, and what suggestions you give to people in this situation from a spiritual standpoint? And then the second part is, how do you control the run of emotions when you are willingly, unwillingly forced into a discussion which tends to polarize with being either racist to an extent or nationalist or someist. So that's just what I wanted to kind of hear your point of view on, please. That's okay.
Well, it's general. I mean, every situation is different. You know, if we have a specific situation, it'll need a specific way of dealing with it. I mean, the whole process is, we want to actually give Krishna consciousness. We have to do the needful. We have to see we have to be relevant. So, you know, Krishna is very relevant. He doesn't actually impose anything which is not relevant to that person and his ability to actually digest it. So the main consideration is to see what people can digest. And, you know, the social situation, maybe that certain things are definitely things we shouldn't say, even though ordinarily we may be able to say them. And so we have to be aware of that. This is the expert. This is why, you know, the Uttama Adhikari, he actually, like Prabhupada, he can actually see every situation and preach appropriately. But at least we should try to act like Madhyama Adhikaris. That means that we do understand the different levels of people in this world and what they're able to actually, you know, accept. And we're talking about the general people who are described as being relatively innocent. They're not necessarily against devotional service, but they just need actually guidance. So I think you're talking about that class of person. Is that right?
Yeah, possibly in one sense, but especially for people who tend to become victims of social injustice, like what's happening with people in America with the Black Lives Movement, etc. And we tend to see this from time to time. So what's the spiritual take on one, either dealing with it yourself if you unfortunately are in that situation, or making suggestions to someone who ends up being in that situation, purely from a spiritual perspective, to try and bring them out of that frame of mind?
Yeah, I mean, if they're prepared to listen, you know, to get someone to listen to transcendental knowledge, it's not easy. So we can't always go there. But if they're prepared to, if they're actually calm enough, and you can actually speak about the real identity, and then start speaking about, you know, our externals, that's best. And Prabhupada very often did that, and he always did that, actually. But, you know, we're dealing with people who are not necessarily able to do that. And so this is where, you know, we need to be in contact with ISKCON communications an Uttama. And even the GBC contact him on certain situations to know how to go forward and what to say, what to avoid. So, you know, ultimately, if it's a really sensitive situation, it would be good to get advice from him. And if for some reason the urgency of the situation doesn't give us time, then you know, the main thing is not to upset the person. You know, better to remain quiet, because that's Krishna's mood. You know, an atheist or somebody who's antagonistic towards him, he doesn't approach. He actually keeps away so he doesn't make the matter worse. So unless we can actually do something positive, then best to keep your mouth shut, you know. Only if we can do something positive.
Yeah, I get that. So just try not to make it worse, is what you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah, about the first part of the question, I'd just like to, about, you know, staying in your own social position and hearing. I mean, this is actually, it doesn't forego that we can actually give that to others. You know, the whole purpose of staying in our social position and hearing is that we become convinced. And then when we become convinced, we become enlivened. And when we're actually convinced, then we're actually so convinced that we think this is too good for other people to miss out on, and we start to give it to others. So the result of this hearing is that if we're hearing properly, we will actually want to actually give Krishna consciousness. So that's the whole point, is that we hear and give, hear and give. And in this way, you know, the hearing process will go on, and the movement will grow, and we'll become more and more inclined to actually give Krishna consciousness. The problem is that it doesn't happen fast. And so, you know, devotees can become a little bit disappointed when it's not acting on the level that they thought it should. But don't worry, it's everything we do, even just being a devotee, it is actually affecting the whole society. I went for a walk I keep mentioning this is my hunting ground now. It's called Offend Playing Fields. I don't go to Alexander Park because, you know, it's so packed. I walk down to Offend Playing Fields. It's quite a long walk, but I chant some japa and I walk around there. And, you know, I usually leave my tilak on. There's no reason to take it off, even if I'm in plain clothes. And you can see people are going. And at first I think, what the hell? What's he staring at? And then there were one Muslim guy who, you know, they would have got their Merc and they were all sat around it, you know. And I walked by, he says, "Hey, great, man, great." Cool. And he pointed to the tilak, you know. So, you know, being a devotee, if we keep our neck beads on a tilak, you know, people think it's cool.
No, I agree, Maharaj. I think what you're referring to is having that conviction in knowing what you're doing is the right thing, recommended by the acharyas and the entire bona fide disciplic succession. And I agree about the appearance as well, because there are so many people who are going around getting away with all sorts of nonsense with hairstyles and tattoos and whatnot. And these are auspicious symbols which we should be proud of wearing as whenever possible.
Yeah, probably in the early days in New York, when Satsvarup Maharaj, and he started working, he said, "Yeah, you can continue. We need money. Continue at the you know, at the offices, and but you wear a seeker, you shave your head, and you wear tilak, and you wear your neck beads." He says, you can wear a suit. So Prabhupada didn't budge on that. I mean, obviously, sometimes we have to grow our hair a little bit to be sociably acceptable. I mean, that's another thing. Actually, Thakur, he used to shave his head once every month, or was it every fortnight? And then okay, anyway, I think...
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay,
Hare
Maharaj,
Krishna.
thank you very much. I'll just make a quick announcement. Maharaj, thank you again for your time and enlightening us. So, Hare Krishna devotees, thank you very much for tuning in today. So we have sent the information out about virtual Rath Yatra this year. As we are unable to do a physical Rath Yatra, celebrate physical Rath Yatra this year due to pandemic. So there is a virtual Rath Yatra online festival for the pleasure of everyone. So it is scheduled for 12th July, Sunday, 12th July. And the purpose is to, motivate and enlighten devotees. There will be a talk, online talk on Jagannath pastimes and the history of Rath Yatra. If you just kindly sign up, there is a link. So if you just click that link and fill the details in, if you sign up, we will try and deliver prasadam to your door. Where it is not possible to deliver prasadam to your door, we will try and post some prasadam out. So please share that link with your near and dear and encourage people to sign up. And also just a request that if you want to be part of this volunteer team that we are trying to build up to distribute this prasadam door to door, if you like to be part of that team, you may contact Radha Vinod Prabhu or myself. So that would be really appreciated. So thank you very much. So Hare Krishna, and we shall see you.
To ordinary people.
Sorry, Maharaj, are we going door to door to ordinary people's house? Did you say?
Yeah, that's what I thought you said.
Yeah, Maharaj, where possible, we will try and go like whoever signs up. There is a signing up process, and when they sign up, they have to fill in their address and their phone number, etc. So, so not everybody's house, only people, those who are signed up.
All right, no problem. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So see you next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Hare